Welcome to Biz Dev Live. I'm so excited to bring you Winter Wheeler today. My name is Cameron Toth, the host of Biz Dev Live on every day at 11 a.m. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please subscribe, hit that like button, get that emotion going. We're going to talk about mediation today. We're going to talk about the power to resolve conflicts in your life. We're going to be talking about entrepreneurship. We're going to talk about personal branding. We're going to hear Winter Wheeler's amazing story, all that and more right after the Biz Dev theme.
Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. This is business development, not even selling it. This is intelligent. If you watch it, I promise you benefit. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T.
Winter Wheeler.
Hello there.
Winter Wheeler is a former top civil litigator who has made her niche as an expert mediator. She is sought out for her unique, compassionate, and successful style handling complex matters that involve a diverse range of cultures, including Spanish-speaking clients. Most recently, Winter was a senior attorney at a prominent law firm, and it's this extensive body of experiences she brings into her current mediation practice that makes her work stand out. A graduate of Georgetown University and Tulane Law School, Winter has always combined her passions for culture, diplomacy, and the law. Winter is the creator of the Four Cornerstones of Mediation, which she introduced to the world in her first TEDx talk in March 2021. She is also a co-author of the bestselling book, Networked. Please welcome to the show, Miss Winter Wheeler.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks for being here. And congratulations both on the TED Talk and the book. That's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. Overjoyed, elated, all of the above about those things.
All right. So talk to us about what you're currently doing in your practice, how you help people.
So like you said, I'm a full-time mediator and arbitrator. I do spend most of my time mediating. Mediating is definitely my ultimate passion. I wanted to be a mediator for the longest time. And so now that I'm doing it, I let it occupy all of my daily experiences. I eat, sleep, and breathe mediation. And I believe in this process so much. And I know that the techniques that I use can be applied to everyone's life. So what I'm trying to do, my mission, is to amplify mediation so that more people know about it, not just attorneys or people who have to go through the process, but your everyday person, on the street. I want them to know about mediation and how it can improve every aspect of their life.
I love that. And I really want you to kind of dig deep here and talk to us about your passions, your whys, right? Why you got into this. I know you've had the law degree. We were talking a little bit before we jumped on, just in terms of, the transition from the law career to full-time mediation, right? The book, being able to do all this stuff, you've been able to really personal brand yourself really well. I was attracted to you with the LinkedIn profile. I think you're doing an amazing job. Why are you passionate about mediation, and how did you go from, just trying to figure your way into the world and kind of get into this career?
Right. So I learned pretty early on in my legal career. I think it was definitely my first year of practice that mediation is what I wanted to be doing. I started my career in South Florida. And what's really interesting and amazing about Florida, plenty of things, but in this context, mediation is mandatory. So any case has to be mediated before you can take it to trial. And so that meant, as a lawyer, I spent a lot of time mediating. I was in the mediation room with my clients, trying to hammer things out all the time, probably 2-3 times a week. And they were always my favorite days. And I realized that the reason I was so interested in it and just loved it so much was because I was making the process of litigation much easier for my client. We truncated the process. We made the process cheaper. The clients were happier with a guaranteed result as opposed to taking it to trial. And trials are very risky. You never know what a jury might do. And I got lucky enough to have a mediator mentor very early on in my career. And he told me that if that's really what I wanted to do, I really wanted to be a mediator, I needed to shadow him. And then he helped me come up with the type of mediation career path that I wanted ultimately. And he gave me the advice that I should have the longest, most varied litigation career that I could, while staying on track, because I did not want to be the type of mediator that had retired and then started mediating. I didn't want to be like 65 or 70 trying to mediate. I wanted this to be my career very early on. And so I litigated for 14 years before leaving that entirely and becoming a full-time mediator. It's an interesting story, I guess. I started my career in Florida, like I said, and then I moved to Georgia in 2009 or 2010, I can't remember. But at that point, I was like, okay, well, we have mediation here. It's not mandatory, so it's definitely a different ball game. But what can I do? Who are the mediators that I need to know? Where are the firms that I might want to be involved in, or involved with later when I finally did make that switch? So in 2000, I think it was 2010, I identified that firm that I wanted to be with. I identified a number of mediators that I thought were absolutely fantastic. And I started to watch them and just keep up with what they were doing. And I would, as a litigator, I would try to mediate with these mediators and see if I could pick up pointers as we went along. So you have to, consider I was literally training for where I am right now for 14 years. Wow. Quite literally. Right. So,
and let me just, because maybe you're getting to it, but I really am interested in why the passion around. I sort of get, what you were saying in terms of you seeing it as the solution, but what sort of, what was the light bulb kind of piece for you that said, wow, this mediation thing really changes lives? I heard you saying that it, makes it easier or cheaper for the client, gets to a more reliable result, better than going to trial. But those all sort of seem to me, and this is from the outside looking in, and maybe those things are just so revolutionary in themselves, but those sort of seem like process kind of based things and not necessarily like, this is what I want to dedicate my life to because I see the power of it. So I'm sort of interested in what really, really captured your imagination and your passion around mediation.
Well, I'm sad that you don't find what I said interesting. Yeah, that's why I like it. There aren't, mediation is not one of the sexiest things out there.
Right.
That is why I love it. Those are the reasons that I initially loved it. And now that I am a mediator, my feelings about it have just intensified. And that happened because I saw how people's lives were changing through the process. And so the story I was telling was about why I enjoyed it as a litigator when I was there representing someone and advocating for someone. I'm a neutral now. I do not advocate for anyone. And so I am present in every room where there's a party, and we have conversations about how those people feel and how the cases are impacting their lives, what other things are going on in their lives that are causing them to have different types of feelings about what's going on with the litigation process. And it is amazing to watch people go through this very cathartic experience with me, because I encourage them to tell me about all of the emotions that they're having, but particularly the negative emotions. And we work through that and we talk through that, and we help them get from this is what I want to happen to this is what I need to happen to be able to move on with my life. So typically what happens is people will come in and they're very frustrated. They may be very angry at the opposing side. All of that is very normal. But in order to get a case settled, you need to take them out of that negative space, out of that anger, and help them see how they can move forward, what they actually require to move forward. So, sometimes it's, do you really need $1 million to move forward? Or are you actually going to allow this process to fall apart because you can't have $1 million? Or sometimes it's, would you like to settle this case for X amount because you would like that finite solution? But what's really fascinating is in the more emotional cases, even when people don't get what they think they wanted and they get what they need, they leave satisfied. So there is this terrible saying about negotiation and mediation that everyone has to leave unhappy, and that's the sign of the process having worked. Well, it's just, I hate that. It's absolute nonsense.
Nobody leaves happy. So then the negotiation was a success, right? Nobody was 100% happy. And
that's absolutely wrong.
and I think it is, because I want to ask some questions. I think later on in the show, like I definitely have met with people over the last year. They had business relationships, they built brands, and now the people have gone certain ways. And I feel like what you're doing is something that they need in their lives so that they can not only move on, whether they're going to move on with those people or without, but move on in a way, like you say, in a way that they can take advantage of those relationships or maintain those relationships, maybe changed, but in a way that both parties are happy and able to move forward, making money, seeing each other at the store and not wanting to fight, all that kind of stuff. But I wanted to kind of get back to kind of the personal a little bit before we delve into sort of the business of mediation and all the places that will do great for other people. But I'm really interested just to sort of bring it out a little bit, because you are passionate about this. And as much as I want to say, because I think there's certain things that I do, I'm really passionate about opportunity and education. I think the process pieces of it, I work in a nonprofit where, we do peer-to-peer, and the piece of it that really works really well. And I can talk all day about, peer-to-peer education rather than a 42-year-old white guy talking to urban students. I can talk all day about why that's a whole lot better if little Susie and little Sally are talking to little Jennifer than 42-year-old Cameron Toth, right? In terms of improving their outcomes. But is there something that happened with you that personally, like you were like, man, this mediation thing, I see it in people's lives around me? Because it sounds like, and maybe I'm just throw stuff out there, but it sounds like something personal happened with you that you really saw that you happened beyond just the business kind of piece of it.
I mean, yeah, I started trying to use the techniques that I was using in mediation since I was seeing such great results. I started using them in my personal life. And I saw improvements in my relationships as well. And so I, at that point, realized that I was onto something very, very special. And I sat down and put pen to paper over a couple of days and, to try to write down exactly what it was that I was doing, what was working, why I thought those things were working. And I think the real catalyst was when I started using the techniques on my husband, and we just stopped arguing as much. I mean, we're, just a normal married couple, but it is much easier to have conversations with him when I started to approach him as I would approach someone else who was in a conflict. So I kind of remove myself a little bit from the emotional side of the equation and just kind of tap into what the other person is thinking and what they're going through. And you really focus in on that. I use the technique with my children. I always talk about my 3-year-old and his tantrums, right? So I don't argue with my toddler. I just sit and I listen to him, and I give him the space that he needs to understand his own emotions and figure out what it is that he really wants and why he's feeling the way that he is. And so what ended up happening was I came up with the 4 cornerstones of mediation. And that process is, it includes emotional intelligence, cultural knowledge, cultural immersion, and genuine empathy. And I just recently gave a TEDx talk on that topic. And you can find it on YouTube. You can search for Winter Wheeler TEDx. But so it's pretty easy to find. I hope you'll watch it. But that's really what happened. I started to see around me that I could help people get through their regular problems, their non-litigation problems, by using this technique. And it's been really inspiring to see people just take to it so quickly and so easily. And the feedback that I get is just amazing. It's awesome. I talk to people all day, every day about mediation, right? And so once the TEDx talk came out a few weeks ago, my inbox is just exploding with people telling me that they're really, really trying to implement these cornerstones and, starting to see results. And can I help them learn more, better, whatever, how to do it. And so that is what keeps me excited about this. It's always new. Every single day is different, and every person I help is different, and every argument or dispute that I get to help resolve or watch be resolved is new and exciting for me. So I mediate every day, but it's a completely different experience every day, and so it keeps that spark going for me.
So since you just went through can you go through these? So you got emotional intelligence, cultural
knowledge,
cultural empathy,
cultural immersion.
Okay.
Yes. And then genuine empathy.
You want to walk us through that? I mean, just, how that applies to everyday lives. I think it's great that you're talking about using it on your husband, your spouse, and your children. I think everybody's looking for ways to sort of manage their relationships a little bit better. And then I'd love to delve into some of the business stuff, because I have a feeling we're going to be able to help a lot of people today.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is what I actually talk about a lot on my podcast. My podcast is called The Mediate Now, and it is about how you apply mediation techniques to everyday life. So if anyone is interested in that, you can definitely find me at themediatenow.com. And so emotional intelligence, when we think about that in its most basic form, it's about, how you understand your own feelings, whether or not you're in tune with how you personally feel, and if you're able to allow that knowledge to help you make decisions in your life. So, we often think of like IQ or EQ. Emotional intelligence is slightly different, because it's really focusing on the inner person and how you kind of disrupt your own thought process to just make yourself more aware of how you move through the world and understand how other people might be viewing you as you're doing that, right? Cultural knowledge is all about learning the cultural norms of any given culture. And that is something that you can do by picking up books, right? So the example that I gave a couple of examples in the TED Talk, but one is, do you nod your head up and down to indicate yes, or do you shake it side to side to indicate yes? So if you're walking around the streets of America, anywhere, and someone shakes their head like this, you automatically think, you think no, right? And so someone from another culture would think that you mean yes. And so, neither one is right or wrong. They're just different. And you wouldn't know that if you don't go looking for that information. Now, cultural immersion is the key here, really. It's been the key for me. I have spent a lot of time, I've lived abroad and just made it a purpose to learn about other people by being involved with those people. So backing up a little bit, cultural immersion is exactly what it sounds like. It's immersing yourself in another culture and putting yourself in a position where you can't consider yourself to be a stranger to that culture anymore. And you really get involved when you really get involved in the process, you start to understand almost intuitively why people do what they do, how they do what they do, what motivates them, and how you can, navigate through that culture on your own. And you can take that knowledge and translate it back to your own culture and help other people start to navigate that system as well. On like a very, very broad level, you might consider that something that allies do, by trying to learn about another culture so that they can be more sympathetic, empathetic, all of that to that particular culture, right? And then, of course, empathy, genuine empathy is what I say, because you can, there's a debate about whether or not you can be taught empathy. I have plenty of feelings about that, but so I focus on genuine empathy, because if the empathy does not come across as genuine, the process does not work. And genuine empathy is really just about having concern for other people and how they feel, being able to pay attention to the cues that they're giving you, and mirroring that back to them. And so when we put all of those together, it helps us to have easier conversations with people who are different than we are. So, let's go ahead and say that it's impossible to culturally immerse yourself in every possible culture you might come across, right? In any given day. I mean, I do focus primarily on
somewhat time sensitive, right? Yeah.
Right. I focus obviously on the cultures that I see most frequently in my practice. But what you can do is have the wherewithal to understand that there are differences. Mm-hmm. Don't go in assuming that this person is going to understand you and your cultural norms, just like you can't assume that you will understand theirs. And so it's a lot of it is just the acknowledgement that people are very different, yet very, very similar. And when we can acknowledge that people come from different points of view, then it's much easier to have conversations with them, no matter what the topic of that conversation is.
How do you separate, finding cultural differences from stereotypes, right? So, because mm-hmm. whether it's a male, female situation, different cultures. I mean, I'm just thinking of 1,000 different negative pieces that are put out into the media about how people are different. How do you disassociate stereotypes from actual cultural differences that you need to pay attention to in a given meeting, setting, relationship?
Right. So you would not consider stereotypes. You just would not do that.
Isn't there the danger that somebody will mistake a stereotype for a cultural difference?
Absolutely. And so this process is teaching you not to do that. Do not do that. Do not don't fall back on things that you think you know. You need to go learn these things genuinely, from verified sources and from, real books about these cultures, not what you're seeing on the news in the afternoon or what your Uncle John said at Thanksgiving. Like, that's definitely not okay. That will get you nowhere. This process requires a lot of work on part of the person who wants to implement it. It is not simple. It's not easy. It's not a quick fix. If you are genuinely interested in learning, if you're genuinely interested in interacting with someone of a different culture, you need to put the effort in and really learn about it, and not just kind of operate off of information that you gleaned over the years that may or may not be true.
Yeah, I credit to my father is that he got me into reading, and then years later I heard that reading as a young child, especially fiction, but reading in general, gives you this ability to empathize with people more. So this kind of taking in of different viewpoints from whatever sources. Obviously, if you can go spend time in different countries and different communities, really getting to know people. Again, time constraints, right? But one of the great ways that I know we can teach our kids to be a little bit more empathetic is exposing them to lots of literature and getting them involved in reading. How do you, if you're training a grown-up professional to mediate? And I think this is such an important conversation, and I think mediation, you sort of elucidated not the most sexy of topics, but I remember as a child sitting on, I had about this room, but I remember sitting on the steps to my room and just having this like epiphany at, I don't know, 8 or 10 years old. I can't remember how old I was, but just understanding, wow, like the root of all like problems in the world is misunderstanding, right?
Absolutely.
It's people not understanding where somebody else is coming from. This understanding of misunderstanding that's the root of all the problems, the wars. If we were all, I think a little bit more of a mature point of view is that there's some people that understand perfectly well what they're doing, and they use misunderstanding to their benefit. We've been through a recent regime in our own country that is a great example of that, and we can see examples being played out every day where people are fostering a misunderstanding to their benefit, right?
Absolutely.
But it still gets down to, if people understood more, if they were able to empathize with people more, if they were able to actually do the deep thinking to get down to the bottom of these issues, whether it's a simple thing between people having a business relationship that's going to trial, or, regional conflicts in the world, actually having the societies, the culture kind of come together and really understand, it's all one place, right? We're all one people. We're all trying to live and survive and love and make our way in the world. And nobody's at the very base of it. No people, anyways, are particularly evil in themselves, right?
Absolutely.
So it's really powerful work that you're doing, and I love that we're tackling it. Talk about, mediation is always the absolute best way to resolve all conflicts. So just bringing in these topics of, as big as war, litigation, hostile takeovers, all these kind of things. Why is mediation always the way to go?
Because mediation is far less adversarial than any other process we have available to us when we talk about dispute resolution, right? So mediation gives everyone the opportunity to present their side, to present how they feel about something, because you can go to court. The judge doesn't really want to hear how you feel. They're not there to listen to that. Often litigants are put into positions where, their attorneys don't want to hear about how they feel. They simply don't have time. The attorney doesn't understand how important that piece of the puzzle is to finding the resolution. And so we can even talk about mediation in the workplace. That often happens. And so those are not litigants. They're people who are just not getting along while at work. And so if you bring people together And they could literally be in the same room, or you could have an intermediator going, why am I messing up that word? Intermediator going between, going between the rooms. Oh my gosh. And it's not even early. So what we see is that when you give people the ability, the space, the opportunity to have their say, to make sure that they are seen, that they feel that they have really been heard, a lot of the problems kind of go away. For example, like when I'm arguing with my husband about something and he's just not getting what I'm saying, I might start repeating myself, right? But repeating yourself doesn't help if they're not actually hearing you. And so when the mediator,
something around the definition of crazy, right? Doing the same
exactly
thing over and over, expecting a different result. Yes,
exactly. And so it took me a long time to figure that out, but I've got that now, at least at home. But using mediation, you can present your side to a third party and have them help you craft the best way to actually convey that information to the other side in a way that they can actually hear it. Human beings get very, very mired in their own positions. You get stuck in your own emotions. You get stuck in your own head, and it becomes, well, this is what happened, and it's objectively terrible. And if they don't understand that, there's something wrong with them. We know that as, outsiders, that in any given situation, there are several ways to see the same situation, right? But when you're part of what's happening, you're personally invested, it's hard to see those other sides, at least with any rational clarity for the most part.
Well, and because you feel so clear, right? You feel like your viewpoint was the viewpoint. You were there. You saw it, right? We are very much human beings. If we see it, we believe it. And so sometimes our sight can really mess us up because what we think we saw is our whole truth when sometimes that really isn't the case.
Exactly. And so I as a mediator, I spend my time translating for people and showing them there really is another way to see this. It's like, okay, I don't know you. I don't know them. All I know is what you've told me. And this other person is not crazy. So let me help you see this the way that they're seeing it. Because, in the context of litigation, if you can't come to an agreement, you can't see what the other side is saying, you're really putting yourself at risk, because if you have even one juror who sees it that way, you're potentially, done for. You get hit with a big verdict. You could, get kicked out of court. I mean, it could be anything, but you would lose. So by going through mediation, you develop a clearer sense of what happened and what other people can believe happened. What is another rational way for someone to interpret what you believe to be true? And I think that's really the key. It's not changing people's minds. It's never about changing people's minds. Every once in a while, I do change someone's mind about what they believe or what they know happened to them. But it's really just about explaining that there are other ways to see it. This is not black and white. It's not going to be your way 100% of the time. Yeah, and so you know what I mean?
Yeah, I wanted to jump in because you're bringing two thoughts. One on the business side, which I'll come back to, but you were talking about spouses, and I was immediately going to 15, 16 years into my 17 years married to my wife. I finally learned, or at least have made progress in learning, that sometimes I don't need to come up with the solution. I just need to listen, right? And so sometimes, and I think this happens in business. I think it happens in relationships for sure. But in so many different places that, when we listen, if we're listening just to provide a solution, that may not be the right answer, right? It may just be that a concern wants to be heard. I know you were kind of bringing that up, and something that's so important. And what relationship is more important than those that involve our spouse and our children, right? So that's a big deal. I think that's helpful to people. And then the other piece of it, because you're talking about, potentially litigation, business and everything, but, what about with clients, right? So, I have, and I am part of a 5 a.m. group. One of them has a business where they're selling a lot of jewelry to folks. And so there's always questions that she's kind of throwing out there, like how to phrase this and how to talk about this. But where does mediation come in with clients for a business, right? I'm sure you have this sort of challenge all the time, especially because you're having conflicted parties enter into negotiations with you. But how to have these conversations with clients that, do take some sort of mediation, whether it's on the front end of actually getting the business to explain what's going to happen, or during the middle or end of the process where somebody may not be happy with what's going on.
Right. So it's the same it's the same technique that you would continue to use over and over and over again. You want to get in their shoes. You want to get in their head. You want to understand what is going to motivate them to do what you would like for them to do. And you have to know what makes them tick in order to do that. And so, if you're talking about like a specific client, you do the research that you can do on them, that whatever you can find online, whatever's available, whatever. But then consider what it is that can consider what their problem is and what it is that you have that solves that problem, right? So helping people get from what they believe the problem to be to this is the solution to the problem, even though I never considered it. That's how you kind of get a client to come along on this, business journey with you. So I talk to potential clients all the time, and we chat about what they're seeing in their practice, because I'm talking to lawyers for the most part, but we talk about what they're seeing in their practice and what has been keeping them from making the deals on their own, what's been keeping their settlement rates lower than they want them to be, what's preventing them from getting higher settlement amounts. And so we try to work through all of that. And in that process, that information gathering process, I'm able to pick up on cues about what is actually important. What are the underlying values that they are expressing to me? So again, in my example of a mediator talking to attorneys, I want to know if this attorney is the type who is genuinely invested in the well-being of their clients. Most of them are, but some are less so. And it's really just about money to them and maximizing for their own good, which in turn will help the client. All of that is fine. It's whatever. But knowing the difference helps me figure out how to approach that person later. So you start by having those initial conversations where you're just doing the information gathering. And it's great because clients like to talk about themselves. People like to talk about themselves. They want to be heard. And so while you're doing that, you're making sure that they're happy because they're talking about themselves. And then also you're getting lots of information. So you can always go back for that second meeting, that third meeting with a little bit more information, a little more ammo until you can land that client, reel them in. Does that answer your question?
I do. And I particularly love the piece of almost like, and this comes up in networking and so many times, let people talk about themselves, right? If you can find some way to let them talk about themselves, the people are probably pretty happy, right? And it's not always easy because not everybody always wants to talk about themselves. But once they get started down that path, the smile comes up, and things get easier. So if you can coax people down that road, and you can be that ear to listen to, I think whether it's mediation or just about anything else, right, the process becomes a little bit smoother, right?
Absolutely.
I love that. And then it gives you, because you talked a little bit about research, right, in terms of, how do I find out what this person's motivations are, what they actually desire. And so if it's difficult to research a client and you can't get that information from a third party, which again might not even be accurate, right? Because we're not immersed in their lives, right? But having somebody give it to you from themselves, which isn't always easy, but if they do deign, if you can pull it out of them and coax it out, please tell me about yourself, what your inspirations are. I know in my networking, that's what I try to focus on in my one-to-one, is really finding what a person's motivations, what their why is, why they do what they do. And that way, I feel like it's a more valid connection, because then I can connect them to other people that have similar interests within my own network. I then become a more value of them. And then any other business transactions that are happening down the road automatically become a whole lot easier, because the motivations for the relationship are much more organic, for lack of a better word. There's a lot more connectivity just in terms of, oh, wow, this person gets me, it understands me. And I think that's at the root of what I think you're sort of talking about when you talk about emotional intelligence. You're talking about, being immersed in the culture, right? And so if you feel like they get you, or this person gets me, things become a little bit smoother automatically right from the go.
Absolutely. Because yes, the root of this is that people want to be understood, and they want to work with people that they like. So if you can make yourself very, very likable up front, it's so much easier to get their work, and then to have them trust you with it and to guide them in the best way possible. So it's win-win all over the place if you start to think about and put some real energy in on the front end. And so these cornerstones that I use, they work on everything in every context. And listen, I'm almost blown away that I was able to write this out and and figure out that I could actually use it all the time, just over and over and over again. The process literally doesn't change.
So
and it's,
I was just going to say, I just recently read Malcolm Gladwell's Strangers, I think is the title of the book. I don't know if you've read this book, but the idea that people usually are extraordinarily bad at judging other people. For example, putting it together in terms of a computer looking through court cases to convict, people that have proven one way or another actually to have committed a crime, versus the actual judges, the computer way far and above, which you would think, well, the judge is actually seeing the people. Nope, put the information into the computer. The computer comes out with great results. I know I'm murdering the actual telling of the study that was involved with that, but the idea from the book I thought was incredible, and it talked about historical pieces, people going in and trying to mediate or at least deal make, like with Hitler and just like people being really bad judges of character in lots of different situations. So how do you as a mediator avoid the false positives, right? You're and I think maybe a little bit more explanation of the role of neutral, right, is due for explanation, because as you're working through a process, you're hearing from both people's sides, you're keeping them out of court so that this whole maybe false positive kind of situation is avoided, right? In the sense of, we're going to put it in front of the lawyer and it's not what it is, you hear this in movies, and I think we see it play out in real life, because while we can see things happening on a videotape, the jury isn't necessarily going to come to the same verdict that we're coming to at home, right or wrong. But certainly over time, we're seeing that the justice system doesn't seem like it's really protecting the people in every case, right? So how do you sort of do that on the mediation so I avoid these false positives and really get to the meat of the matter, the truth, as it were?
Right. So being in neutral is just the coolest thing. I mean, I guess I do think it's pretty sexy. But people have they have a lot of respect for the fact that I come in and I tell them I'm not on your side. I'm not on your side. I'm not here to, blow smoke or bolster. I'm here to help get you to the truth, to get you to what other people might think about this. And I want you to know that I'm doing the exact same thing in the other room. So, if I'm being hard on you today, I'm being hard on everybody. And it takes some of the sting out of being told that I think that you're wrong about this, right? People don't like to be told that you don't agree with them, or that you really believe that they're wrong, or that they've misinterpreted something. But when you start by saying, I'm really here to help you, and I'm not doing my job if I'm not tough on you with how we get to these results, then, people are expecting something other than what you can give. So you give that, you set the bar to start, and you let them know this is not going to be an easy process. I'm not here to, coddle you or help you, persist in what is potentially a false narrative. And I had a case like that very recently where the attorneys had simply misread a document. They just misread it. And they
were back to the misunderstanding thing again. Yes.
Right. They just misread the document. And so I heard it from one side, how it was, how this worked. And then I heard from the other side, and it was something completely different. And I said, hold up a second. This is very, very basic to this case. We need to figure out what is actually true here. Because this was something this was factual. There was an answer to this problem, right? So I sat down and I did some research. I took research from both sides and I looked at all of it and I was like, oh, well, yeah, I know who's right about this one. And so so the party that had misinterpreted, we went back and we looked through all of the information and the research together. And they were just like, we really did. We misread this. We need to reevaluate, and we can reconvene in a few weeks. And if they didn't trust, right, if they didn't trust me enough to know that I was being impartial and just trying to get the best result for everyone, they wouldn't have believed me, and it would have fallen apart entirely. They would end up having to go to trial, and they would have been wrong at trial, and it would have been terrible. But thankfully that didn't happen. There was another part to your question, and now I've lost it.
No, I just was looking out for those false positives, but I think that's a little bit of the root is just like, I'm gonna look at this from the lens of, I like what you're saying. What are people on the outside going to see? Let me see your side of it, and let me see your side of it, and so you sort of get this sort of stencil from our better right. Sort of example of. Because what I'm sort of seeing in my head is sort of maybe like a Venn diagram, right? Where so I see here's your side and here's that side, and this is where it meets in the middle, and where we have some agreement, and we can actually have a place to work from, to figure out some forward movement, right?
Absolutely. I like that. Venn. I'm going to write that down and start using the Venn diagram.
I think it's interesting, and I can't help but think about things like the Middle East and, just major conflicts in the world that have raged on, and people go to these tables and you say, why can't people find the agreement? Why can't they understand each other better? And, going back to your four cornerstones, right? Are people doing the work? Do they want to do the work? Are they going to do the work? And I think in a lot of cases, there's just a lack of
Mm-hmm.
I'm searching for the word, but it's a lack of caring, right? The idea
Yeah.
that I'm not interested in hearing the other side, right? And so
Right.
when that happens, right, then there's not really a way to get to the middle of the Venn diagram. I'm just, opposed. And we're going through that
Absolutely.
with so many factions in our own country. I'm actually, reading a book right now that's talking about, just the way the politics has changed in this country over time. And so people have just really gone to the edges, and you can certainly see it. There's just a lack of desire of finding middle ground. And I don't know. I think that's a greater problem than we set out to solve at the start of the show. But I think it's one of the things that, if you can recognize that, right? If you can recognize the other party just doesn't have any desire, then it's another kind of battle you're fighting. You're not trying to seek to understand. Then it gets back to maybe I'm just listening and letting
Right.
somebody vent. And then, I'm learning what motivates this person, and I can take another tack, but I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you the sky is blue when you're saying, no, it's absolutely yellow, and I don't believe it's any other color, and I'm not going to listen to you about it. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about your day. What's going on? And then maybe there's something else, right? But if we're just going to sit here and bat heads, there's really no way to the center.
Absolutely.
I want to talk about two things as we're kind of closing up the show here. This kind of third takeaway that you're talking about: be yourself and live your dream. Be brave. If I can do it, anyone can. I think you've done a great job with branding yourself. You're in a career that some people may not say is super sexy. I think you've done a great job of making that position today, at least in my mind. You move the needle right for me.
Thank you.
Talk to us a little bit about that, right? How have you been able to kind of move into your full self? You're part of this book, network.
Yes,
right?
networked.
20 female lawyers, right?
Yes.
Really powerful. Talk to us about, how you've kind of moved the needle forward, the TED Talk, how that has happened for you. How have you done a great job of kind of getting your message out and pushing forward? I know so many people are going through things like just feeling like inadequate, that they may not be the voice to come forward, and people need to get over that, right? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah. If you have a passion and you know that you have researched it and you've done the work and this is something that you believe in and is right, do it. Go for it. I mean, we can't live in fear of judgment because we are being judged all the time, over absolutely everything that we do. And if you allow someone else's opinions to stop you, you've failed yourself. And I think that's the ultimate, it's the ultimate sadness, I think, in human life. You see people who've had dreams that they just never tried to bring to fruition because they got negative feedback. And so in Networked, I talk about what was the, that final straw for me, that like immediate catalyst that took me out of the law firm. And it was, I was still in a place, and I had no idea that I was doing this, but I was still in a place where I was seeking external validation. I had already gotten what I had always wanted. I was going to be working with this mediation firm, and I was ecstatic, right? But I was afraid, because people are always afraid of things and change, right? But I went to an older woman partner, and I told her about what was going on and how happy I was for it, and that I was feeling a little bit concerned about what that was going to look like in my practice as part of the law firm, right? Like, how do I incorporate these two things? How do we change my pay structure to accommodate all of this? And she told me with a straight face that I would never be a good mediator because she didn't know anyone who effectively made that switch. and she was so serious, and she genuinely didn't mean to be nasty, but she has her own limiting beliefs. And I can look back at it now and say that at the time I was just pissed and quit my job that day.
And rightfully so, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But now I know it's because she has her own limitations.
And that's something, right? Somebody, listening and coming up with a solution on their own, right? Because I don't think it probably came from a place in her where she was, I don't know. I mean, I can't imagine, I don't think she was saying it from a place of like, oh, I want to keep you down. She just honestly believed that it was not possible because it hadn't been done. And so that was the advice that she was giving you. And without knowing it, I mean, I think, so many people, we have so many stories like college advisors. Oh, you're not going to make it. This isn't the right thing from there. And, the limiting belief in their head is that they haven't seen it done before. So
exactly. And let me tell you, I am special. I know I'm special. I'm one of the youngest mediators in the state. I'm very young for a mediator. I'm not even 40 yet. And being Black, being a woman, all of these things were, looked at as barriers. And they're not barriers. It's me. I am the secret sauce, right?
And in the end, right? These things that somebody else might look as a deficit, right? These are things that are going to be advantages for you because you have a different angle and a different appreciation. I want to kind of go real quickly back because we talked in the beginning about most of the mediators that are in the industry are retired lawyers. And you definitely said, I want to be somebody that's not at the end of their career doing this work. Why?
I knew I wanted to do it, and I didn't want to spend an entire career waiting for the next thing that I already knew I wanted, right? And it didn't matter to me. I was not perturbed at all by the fact that this was going to be something that was very, very different. Also living in Atlanta as a Black woman has been tremendous because there are so many Black women for me to see. They're everywhere. It's amazing. So it was a little bit less daunting because I was like, I can be successful doing anything. I know that I can do this. And that's just, some of that is just confidence my parents instilled in me or whatever. But
yeah, I wouldn't whatever that. That's a big deal.
That is a big deal.
Mom and dad, so it's so interesting that so many success stories start with like my mom pushed me to do or my dad pushed me to do. It really, really does make a difference. Absolutely.
Yeah. So it always hurts my heart when I talk to, a student who's interested in ADR, who has been told that they can't do it because of their accent, or they can't do it because of this or because of that. And I end up spending far more time with that person than I really had allotted, and, trying to, build them back up. Like, you can do anything that you want.
And forgive me, I don't know the industry abbreviations. ADR?
Oh, alternative dispute resolution.
Okay, beautiful.
So mediation, arbitration, any kind of.
You just helped out a lot of people that were on my same way. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's good. No, that's awesome. And do you get a chance to speak to a lot of young people around this?
I do. I try to talk to as many as I can. There are only so many hours in the day.
Yeah.
But I get to do programs like this and reach a wider audience. And I work with the American Bar Association, the National Bar Association, my local bars, to get that message out. We need to encourage people, not discourage them.
No, I'll definitely be connected you to a couple of people. I love finding those folks that are commonly interested in that. That's my whole life, opportunity and education, and really decreasing the level of misunderstandings in the world through, making sure that more people have that access to opportunity and education. Because so many people are, in the world frustrated that they can't get where they want to go. And it's not from a place of, a lack of ability or even lack of resources. They just don't know how to get from where they are in this moment to the place they want to be. Just this one last piece before we go. You have done a great job with personal branding. You've really, the book, the TED, but also in your own career. It takes, being able to play the game of politics to climb corporate ladder in law. I think it's a huge deal, right? How to get the place, the work that you want to get, getting contracts, getting into the right with the right clients. So what has been your approach to personal branding, and what can you sort of give a value to, especially a young person, but somebody that's setting out on the entrepreneurial journey? What would you give them in terms of advice, in terms of promoting themselves to get where they want to go?
The internet is amazing. You could be connected to all types of people and reach out to them. They may tell you they don't have time to talk, or, but they may say, send me some questions and I'll respond by email as soon as I can. Just making those connections, having someone know your name. This is all about personal relationships and interconnecting with other people. Now, I want to have a national mediation practice. I cannot meet everyone in America. And so I spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, on Facebook, interacting with people who are current clients, may never become clients, couldn't become clients, and any amount of interpersonal interaction is very, very valuable. I think people make the mistake of focusing solely on that one thing that they want to do, right? So it would be very odd if all I did was connect with litigators. Are they my target? Of course they are, but there are other people out there. And other people know litigators. So I may not be able to get to that one particular litigator I'm interested in. But if I've made friends with the marketing assistant at some law firm, that helps me get in too. So I think it's all about casting a wide net, making sure you're really appreciating people for what they have, what they are, what they could bring to the table. But like you're saying, to your point, making sure you're giving them something as well. And that can be as simple as a very honest LinkedIn post. I talk about lots of things that happen in my life, and I try to be very, very open and brutally honest with how I see myself and how I see my life and my career, and talking about some of the struggles that I've had and things that I want to accomplish. And by telling people that and by being vulnerable, they feel closer to you, because most people don't want to be vulnerable in public, which I completely understand. That when they see someone who can do that, they're attracted to it. And it brings people closer to me. And especially as a mediator, right, in this particular profession, people want to see that I have a softer side, that I will be able to communicate well with their clients, and they can see that by watching me in, these types of events, by reading my posts, by listening to my podcast, because ultimately people want to work with people that they know and that they like. So if you can make yourself likable and have your name be top of mind, then you've accomplished so much. So my big tip is get out there, be vulnerable, and be seen as much as possible.
I love it. Thank you so much. And I'll point people to the website, www.winterwheeler.com. How else would you like people? I have your LinkedIn in the description of the YouTube video. It's off to the side on Facebook. How else would you love people to reach out and contact you?
You can find me at themediatenow.com as well. You can also just send me an email. I do actually read all of them, winter@winterwheeler.com.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for being on the show with me. I'll let you get back to your life and children and all the good stuff. Please say goodbye to everybody. And thank you so much for being on the show once again.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been amazing. I'm so grateful to be able to talk to your audience, and I hope everyone has a wonderful day and that you focus on the four cornerstones of mediation in your life.
Thank you.
Biz Dev Live. Weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live. Weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C. Brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C. Brought to you by Cameron T. This is business development, not even selling it. This is intelligent. If you watch it, I promise you benefit. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Leadership and motivation, empathy and inspiration. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz Dev Live, weekdays at 11 Eastern Time. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T. Biz D with C, brought to you by Cameron T.